Hey, everybody, as of now, it is Sunday, April 19th, and this is the week of the 2026 NFL Draft in Pittsburgh, which commences on Thursday, even though there are events that happened before that, like, for example, the Wednesday players meeting, which we used to call NFL Play 60, and other related events in Pittsburgh, home of the Steelers. But I've noticed something about this NFL draft completely unlike the others that have been held ever since the NFL started moving the draft around, starting in 2015 with Chicago, then returning to Chicago in 2016, then Philadelphia in 2017, then Dallas in 2018, then Nashville in 2019. Then we had a virtual draft in 2020 because of the pandemic. Then 2021 Cleveland, then 2022 Las Vegas, then 2023 Kansas City, then 2024 Detroit, and then 2025 last year Green Bay, and now we head to the Steel City. So, big difference though. More and more negative news posts and videos, particularly on Instagram, about such things as the homeless problem and uh, the, if you will, residue left by the homeless in various places in downtown Pittsburgh on the way along the path towards several areas, like, for example, the fan entertainment area or on the way to the NFL draft red carpet. And you wonder, where was the plan to really make sure the city was entirely cleaned up like Detroit? And I'm wondering if the difference was that in Pittsburgh, unlike the past when U.S. Steel ruled the city and the steel industry, now you don't have what Cleveland has, which is Bedrock, owned by Dan Gilbert, which basically owns most of downtown Detroit. So I was in Detroit twice for the 2006 Super Bowl, and then, of course, 2024 for the NFL draft. And, folks, downtown Detroit in 2024, absolutely beautiful, clean, ultra modern, remade, fun to be in, and great restaurants like Central Kitchen down there, and just impressive, uh, absolutely impressive. For those of you who have one image of Detroit but haven't been there, say, over the last 10 to 15 years, you're going to be in for a shock, absolute shock. It is absolutely incredible. Now, the recent photographs I've seen of Pittsburgh downtown look great. And overall, it looks like the city is really ready to take on the NFL draft. But this, there are, as recently as just a few days, the images that I saw, which were called into question. Hey, look, these are areas that you need to get machines and go out and clean up. If you have a downtown organization like a downtown economic development corporation, and make sure that they're fully cleaned up and such that there's no smell or scent or visual impediment, if you will, that would turn off the visitor. And right now, there's some of that. Okay. So the other concern I have is the reports that hotels and also Airbnbs have not filled up to the capacity they had in the past. And I believe I know the reason for that. It's the economy. We've talked about how inflation's kicked up because of the tariffs, how costs have impacted because of the tariffs, how travel has fallen and been impacted because of that. And unfortunately, I believe it's going to impact the NFL draft. It doesn't help the situation that quarterbacks like Fernando Mendoza and Carson Beck are not coming to Pittsburgh. Fernando Mendoza is the star of this draft. Indeed, he's the only big star, and yet he's going to be in Miami for his mom, understandable with her multiple sclerosis diagnosis. But Carson Beck is a different story. Why is this happening? Because the NFL didn't pay to make sure that these players come to the NFL draft. And that's why. And so it's a situation where you have to ask, why is the NFL not spending money to bring the players that are supposed to be the stars of the draft to the city that the draft is going to be in, especially at a time of name, image, and likeness where these players are getting compensated well for companies using their name, image, and likeness. And I can't think of a better example of a company using the player's name, image, and likeness than the National Football League itself for draft day. So naturally, their agents would say, hey, look, are you going to compensate us for our client being at the draft? And if the NFL says no, with the bigger stars who are commanding the biggest dollars, you're going to have a problem. Now, fortunately, the majority of people who are invited to the draft get there. But they also tend to be those people who are not the marquee makers, the defensive linemen, the tight ends, the offensive linemen, defensive backs, and so on. All right, they also are thrilled to give their parents the opportunity, who are willing to pay for them to be there. But that's not the case where they should have to do that. They should not the case where they should have to do that. Uh, they should be able to count on the National Football League to say, hey, look, we've got $100,000 to spend on you and your family uh, to come to the draft. And that, because what happens is that will pull the fans of those players and the schools. Those players that are in fraternities and have girlfriends in sororities, you're going to get the fraternities and sororities. In other words, you're going to get all the people who directly and indirectly have relationships with those players. And so the more players you have at the draft, there's 330 college players that are eligible for the draft every year, average number. All right. Why not make it a convention so that at least the first 50 top players are brought to the draft? You have a chunk of money to spend to get them there, which assures that they're there. You have a hotel that they can stay at, or a series of hotels, and it makes it an incredible event. It makes it an absolutely incredible event. So that's something that the NFL is going to have to do in the future, because the situation we're in now is Fernando Mendoza and Carson Beck were in an NFL draft promotion commercial, but neither one of them is going to be at the draft. But the implication is, hey, look, these guys are going to be there. They're not at all. Not going to be there. So it's not a good look. It's almost false advertising in a sense. Well, actually, it is. They did the same thing with Shedeur Sanders last year. Shedeur Sanders elected to stay in Colorado, have his own draft event, and yet the NFL held him up as if he was going to be the number one pick. He wasn't. He fell in ungodly depth in the draft, never seen by any top pick before. And yet when he finally was taken by the Browns, the NFL celebrated him as if he was at the draft. Wow. I mean, the commercials were just mind-boggling. So the NFL really needs to have a come to Jesus moment regarding how it wants to present these players in an era of name, image, and likeness, and really move forward to present and give an honest presentation of the NFL draft that's authentic. And I think that would serve everybody well in the current place and in the future of the draft, because what's going to happen down the road is people are going to get used to the NFL not giving them the straight skinny, and may not even pay attention to the draft, which is another concern I have. When I've talked to people around areas about who they want their favorite team to pick in the draft, and a shockingly high number, I estimate about 50% of the people I asked said, I don't pay attention to football. I've never heard that before. I said, you don't have a team? They would say no. And then when I would say why to people, they would say, I'm just too busy working. A lot of people are just trying to make ends meet. And we're in a situation where you've heard the statistics. You have as many as, what, 70% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. And now you've got a scenario where people are using pay as you go payment. You pay for something, or you buy now, pay later is what it is. You buy now and you pay it later. No interest tied to it. It's only a relatively small percentage of the estimated small percentage of the American buying population doing this, like say maybe 10 to 14%, but or less, but it's projected to actually increase. So we have a crisis here that's developing right under our collective feet, and we're literally doing nothing about it at all. We're not addressing it. It's going to come back on the NFL unless the NFL itself puts the appropriate political pressure on Congress and adds its voice to others who want lower prices and uh, a better way for people to make ends meet. Because, look, it's just like Henry Ford. Henry Ford recognized that he wanted his cars to be affordable to his workers. So he paid his workers well so they could buy his cars, and he priced them so that his workers could buy the Ford cars. The NFL and other organizations have to think about that when they're dealing with the American public today. That's why Las Vegas is in trouble. Las Vegas didn't get that message. It went high dollar and literally priced America out of it. Now it's suffering for it. So the NFL has to be careful that that doesn't happen to it. Subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube and bookmark NFL News by Zenny62.com. That ends the stream.